20 to 40% of all financial plans fail because of unrealized, newly discovered life events. Something happens that shocks their system, that shocks the amount of things that they have to go through.
Today, we are excited to have Robert Kirk, the founder and CEO of Intergent Data.
2009, my family had a life event. We had to move my grandfather into a long-term care facility, and we weren't prepared. It was $14,400 a month, and he was there for 4 years. And at that time, as I said, why didn't we know? Why couldn't I have helped my own family? Our job as a company is to help provide the data to people so that they know, hey, this has got a potential, but because we know it, we can plan for it. So that it's not a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. We're able to predict 95 different life events, and now we can help as many people as we can. We take massive amounts of government data. So CDC, FBI, DOJ, we've created some algorithms that look at data. We would say, well, here's when he's likely to buy his homes. Here's when he's likely to get married, children, buy cars, start businesses, have a pet. Life throws you curveballs. Well, you got to swing. You got to at least know the pitch is coming.
Today, we are excited to have Robert Kirk, the founder and CEO of Intergent Data. With over 35 years in financial services, Robert has crafted a cutting-edge AI engine that predicts life events like retirement and illness, empowering financial institutions to better serve their clients. Robert's journey also spans across Wall Street to tech innovation, and we are thrilled to hear more. Robert, welcome to the show.
Taran, thank you for having me. This is exciting, and I'm glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Robert. Could you start by sharing a little bit about your journey and the work that you're doing at Intergent Data?
Yes, the journey question, where it all began.
Mhm.
So I will start by saying thank you. Yes, I just like to say 3 decades, not 35 years. Makes me sound older. But yes, over 3 decades. And I've built tech, I've integrated it, deployed it across the globe for many types of financial services firms. And the one thing that has really astonished me, but it really holds true today, is that 20 to 40% of all financial plans fail because of unrealized, unknown, newly discovered life events. Something happens that shocks their system, that shocks the amount of things that they have to go through. And our job as a company is to help provide the data to people so that they know, hey, this has got a potential, but because we know it, we can plan for it, right? So that it's not hidden. It's not a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. It's something that you can say, great, I understand. And if it doesn't happen, even better, because now you've saved a little more, you've earned a little more. So that in its highest level is what Intergen Data is. And to go back to the original part of the question, which is how I got started, I'll give you a little bit more background. So at the time was 2009. I was chief information officer of a top 40 broker dealer called First Global. We helped teach CPAs how to do financial planning, estate planning. Either they did it, we did it for them, or we hired other people. So we worked with attorneys, we worked with CPAs. And while that was happening, my family had a life event. We had to move my grandfather into a long-term care facility, and we weren't prepared. I mean, no one is ever prepared emotionally or physically for something like a critical illness. But when my grandfather got Alzheimer's, we had to move him into a long-term care facility. What we really weren't prepared for, though, was it was $14,400 a month, and he was there for 4 years. So if you total that up, that's nearly $700,000. Yeah. And no one ever thinks of that. You know why? I'm invincible, and I'm invincible until I'm not. And
Right.
what happens is when it sneaks up on you or it occurs, and this is the critical illness piece, right? Then you have to deal with it. They always say life throws you curveballs. Well, you got to swing. You got to at least know the pitch is coming. So what we did, and at that time, as I said, why didn't we know? Why couldn't I have helped my own family? Why? You know, Simon Sinek asked why. So as I started asking the questions, I realized that the financial tools that we use, the planning systems, the risk systems, the IPS tools, the asset allocation tools, they're only as good as the person who's asking the questions. And it's not nefarious. People aren't bad. They don't want to cause problems, but no advisor is ever going to come up and Tata, and if you were my advisor, would you come up to us and say, hey, Rob, can you tell me when you plan to have a heart attack? Can you tell me
Awesome.
when you plan to be obese and when you plan to get, you know, arthritis? Well, the answer is
Mhm.
no, right? But the question is, none of the systems actually provided this. So why? And then I realized that it was a lack of data and I found a hole. There's a whole bunch of data missing in all of these tools. So can I find it? Can I look for it? And that started the journey. So back in 2014 was when we first started researching. And it wasn't until about 2018 when I realized, hey, I've got enough data. I know when things are typically going to happen, then more data make them probable, more data makes them statistical, and now it's a math problem. Can I throw math at it? Can I throw AI at it? And by the way, back then, we were doing machine learning back in 2014.
Yeah.
Everyone thought we were a crystal ball. They're like, what are you, a gypsy? They're like, what are you, a sorcerer? Are you playing Dungeons and Dragons? I mean, all kidding aside, they thought we were crazy. They're like, no one's going to care. Well, here we are today.
Mhm.
Now we're able to predict 95 different life events. And now we can help as many people as we can. And so thank you for having us on. Yeah.
That's such an amazing story, and I the work that you're doing is so admirable. I'm curious, can you walk us through how your AI engine works in terms of the data that you guys collect and how it's exactly transforming wealth management and how exactly you guys are predicting those kind of life events? It makes sense about the data, just kind of getting insights into how AI is being applied to that.
Yeah, I'll get in as much as I can without going into an IP
Of
concern,
course, of course.
because then I'll have my lawyers calling me up on the phone here pretty shortly. No, all kidding aside, what we do is we take two sets of data. First, we take de-identified data. So we take massive amounts of government data. So CDC, FBI, DOJ, census data, ACS, PUMS. We get all of these data sets, which basically says who you are, what you do, where you live. And today you can Google the census or you can Google a zip code and say, what's the area look like? Well, that's all the data behind it. It tells you, oh, this area is made up of mostly people who are in their 70s. And oh, by the way, there's no schools there. Okay, so then am I going to move myself if I'm 20 and 30 and I have children? Probably not, right? What's the crime statistic in those areas? That's the stuff that's powered by the government and by government data sets. In addition, we also purchase private data. So a good example would be commercial property, residential property. We have data on every commercial and residential property in the US. We could go to the nth degree of detail or limit the amount of detail. And then you could do things for car purchases and, pets, whether they buy pets, right? What types of things do you buy? Do you buy Mercedes? Do you buy, yeah, Chanel products, right? So these are the things that data is out there. And what we've done is correlated that data. We built a giant data lake of right now a little over 15 billion rows of data. And with information that is about who you are, where you live, what you do. And then what we do is we've created some algorithms that look at data. So we're a Bayesian shop. We're going to go back and look at historical data to then say, can we predict something going forward? And can we do that over a number of years at a high enough accuracy level that we would call it a predictive model? So the answer is yes. And what we've realized is we first will interact with a customer. So if you were a bank or a financial services firm, you would send us a little bit of data with as little as three data attributes. So your age, your gender, your zip for. I can actually respond back and tell you 7, 8, 10,000 columns of additional data that says this person lives in an area where most of the people look like this, or some of the people look like this, and a third of the people look like this, and 20% of the people buy these things, and 30% have this, that they have boats. So all of this information we put together in a way that makes it more geocentric to where you live. but based on who you are. So we're kind of breaking that data. As a bank who's looking to use that data, you might say, I want to market our products, our home lines. You want to market mortgages. Well, you don't want to market your mortgage to somebody who's onto their fourth house.
Right.
We're really trying to do it when they're about to buy the first house, the second house, right? So if you know the area and you understand the demographics, then you want to market it before them. So we're going to tell you, you're going to send us those at minimum 3. Typically, most people will send us anywhere between 11 to 15 pieces of data, all de-identified, and we come back and then run our algorithms through. So think of it as we take your data. So let's say the age, the race, the gender, where you live, what you do. So myself would be AX1234 is a unique identifier, and it would be 55, Native American Indian, financial services, CEO 75098, and boom, we're going to come back with answers. And we would say, well, here's when he's likely to buy his homes. Here's when he's likely to get married. Here's when he's likely to get married to children, buy cars, buy start businesses, have a pet. So all of those things. And then we append data about income and debt and investment and taxes and psychographic data about how you typically are, what your hobbies might be. So that's what we do is we take that data, we ping our database, and then we append the data back based on our predictive models that say, here's when these events are going to happen. But more importantly, here's other information about this person that you might want to know. And so hopefully that gives you a little taste.
It
I'm not
does.
getting too much into the AI, but basically life stage, we put you in the right life stage. We look at your marital status. Once we've determined that, then we know you can only be one of 4 things. You can be a single person, you can be a couple with child or children, or a single parent with a child or children. That's it. From there, you can only be high, medium, and low debt, high, medium, and low
Right.
income. So there's your model. But now that's a model for one person. Oh, but wait, what if a Native American person marries somebody who is from Europe and who happened, or maybe somebody who's Pakistani, or maybe somebody who's Korean, or maybe somebody who's a different race? When do they have? So now you have 2 sets of people with different sets of life events that influence each other. So now you have weights and biases that you build your models on. So that should give
Mm.
you a little bit more detail. Hopefully that
No, for
helps.
sure. That's honestly such an impressive setup, Robert. I feel like the scale of data that you're working with is absolutely staggering. You mentioned 15 billion rows, and you can provide thousands of data points from just 3 simple attributes, age, gender, and zip code. It feels like such a remarkable leap in predictive analysis. I haven't heard a lot of use cases like that. One thing I'm curious about is though, how do you balance accuracy with ethical considerations when predicting sensitive life events? For instance, do you ever encounter dilemmas when deciding what data should or shouldn't be used in your algorithms to avoid potential biases?
Yeah, so I love that question, but if you unpack it, you actually asked about 6 questions. So, so the first question is bias. Let's talk about bias.
Okay.
Each of us has our own bias. I've learned certain things. I'm always going to recall those things and always have a bias towards how I learned it, right? So that's number one. I can give you all the technical terms, but we can go past that, right?
Right.
The
Yep.
second piece would be I walk through a door, get punched in the head. Okay. I just learned that one. I wasn't taught anything before. I walk through the door again, I get punched in the head. How many times before I realize I'm not going to walk through that door, right? So now we have to think of it in a different way. And I'm using this analogy for a reason. If I have data that says me as a Native, I'm going to use myself, it's the easiest, Native American Indian, and just being born, I have a higher prevalence for type 2 diabetes genetically. Can't do anything about it. It is what it is. God made it that way. Go forward, right? My wife, who's Korean, does not have a higher propensity for type 2 diabetes. Hers is cancer.
Right.
Okay. Should I let you know that there's a bias because we understand this data from historically all the people that are like you have that data? Or is it because you get cancer today that we should go back and look at all of your prevalence models? Or what if it happens to be a child who is both Native American and Korean? They're a mix of both.
Correct.
Well, shouldn't we know? Shouldn't we have that information? Shouldn't somebody, if you went to the doctor and the doctor, let's say my higher prevalence for type 2 diabetes, and I went to pick another race, make up one Martian. Martian has 0% probability of type 2 diabetes. And there's 999 Martians in my zip code, but there's only one Native American. You're going to exclude me from the potential of me having this disease because I'm overweighted in something because you didn't want to seem biased or you didn't want to touch the data. And vice versa. Let's say it's the other way. You're going to exclude somebody else and include somebody else. So the real question comes in, how do you want to react to that? What is your purpose? If you're a hospital, I definitely want my doctor to know I'm Native American and for him or her to be able to tell me what my prevalence is, what my probabilities are, because I want the best treatment. That is where we tend to look at the world. But the bias from our data when we do the predictive models, the only way to take that out is not us, it's to work with the client. So if you're the hospital or if you're the bank, is it more information or does it really help or hurt your case, your use case on how you're going to look at the data? Because if you're going to exclude somebody from something by not providing them, then I would consider you nefarious. You're intentionally doing something to not help somebody because you know some information. But if you're using it in an inappropriate way, I can and have the right to say, I don't like what you're doing with this. I'm not going to sell you the data. But if I work with them and say, here's what we think, and then they work with us, the client could say, oh, you're right. We don't need to do this, or we can do it this way. So the bias really is not my decision to make, but it's I influence that decision with the customer because the customer is going to be the one to tell me. Does that help?
It makes a lot of sense. It does. And I really appreciate how you and your company deeply think about the balance between data-driven decisions and the ethical responsibility that comes with it. It's clear you're not just focused on the numbers, but on the broader impact, especially in healthcare, which is so important. But it
Yeah.
did get me to thinking, like, given the complexity of bias and genetics, how do you ensure that your predictive models evolve over time? Like,
Mhm.
specifically, how do you handle feedback loops or potential inaccuracies that could, emerge as more data and diverse populations get added into the system?
Yeah. Again, you have a habit of so far asking questions with
Uh,
4 or 5 questions together. So
I'm
first,
sorry. I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no, no, it's great. So let's talk data security. We want to be as secure as possible with all types of data. Now, there's a risk level. If I
Mm.
told you that there were 1.2 million Native American men in the country, is that risky enough to be a cybersecurity issue? Probably not, right? So there has to come some mode of understanding between a level of impact as well as a dollar cost or duration of the impact of that event. And then we can formulate what's risky. And that's something that we work together. We work to look at your rules of how you think of
Mm.
cybersecurity. What we've done from our infrastructure perspective is we've split our environments, and I'll say it this way. So the very first environment built in Azure, Snowflake on top, it is very, let's call it tightened up, secured. And in that sense, we know who's working on it, who has permission. Those are the policies and procedures to get there to help the security piece, right? Once you have that data and you have that information, then the question is, if I'm providing you more data or I'm using your data and mixing it, where do I keep it secure? So number one, it's all de-identified. All the data you ever give me in phase one of any project is de-identified. So that
Mm.
if you took your data and said there are 38 people in this city that are Native Americans that are men that have type 2 diabetes and are 54, 62, and 58, could you identify them? Probably not, right? So we have to make sure that we're again in alignment. But what we do is we keep all of that data de-identified. We then have the ability to take that same environment, move that behind the customer's firewall, operating in Snowflake, hopefully on Azure. So then they have complete control over anything. So we would then be able to allow them to work on their PII. So the brokerage firm, the hospital, they can do their own work in their own firewall 100% under their control. They can keep all of the PII or PID data if you go across the pond, right? Meaning the UK. So you have the ability to keep that data private, or you can keep it in the public. What we do when I'm processing, this goes back to your question of feedback loop, we have that unique identifier. So that 55-year-old Native American Indian financial services, blah, 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 AX1234. But if AX1234 goes to the hospital and then has these events happen, let's say broken leg, diabetes, whatever it is, what we do is we ask that they send us a de-identified data set back so we can incorporate updates on de-identified data. So that way the feedback loop, so every client will help every other client differently, but they will never know each other. And I won't know them. Only the bank or the hospital or the insurance company will know them. I just have an improved reinforcement learned engine from a de-identified basis. Does that help?
Yeah, it does help and makes a lot of sense. It's such a thorough approach, and it's so interesting how you've integrated such a robust privacy measure while still maintaining the ability to improve the models through de-identified feedback loops. It's no small feat balancing security and innovation. Like,
It's
uh,
it's not.
honestly,
I do laugh, Taran. You made me think of something, and sorry for jumping over top of
no
you.
worries, no worries.
So I've had customers ask me, and they've said, "Well, if we give you that de-identified place back, you're going to learn about them." And I said, "Think of it this way: I am Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookie manufacturer, and I'm making chocolate chip cookies. Go to the store, go buy a chocolate chip bag of Toll House cookies. Can you tell me which chocolate chip or which part of which chocolate chip came from which factory anywhere in the US?"
Of
Well, the
course not.
answer is no, because
Yeah.
you're one individual, you the identified unique individual is in the vast majority of 200 million people. It's
Uh-huh.
not going to influence it, right?
Right.
But that does speak to some problems we have, which is when there's not a lot of people. So, as an example, Native American Indians, Alaska Natives, Pacific Islanders, we're a small group. I mean, there's only, I think, 2.634 million Native Americans.
Mm.
If you say men, now you're down to 1.32. If you say at a certain age, now you get really tiny as a cohort. That's when we decide at some point, it's not going to help. What is your use case? And then we'll see the best way to work, whether it goes behind your firewall or ours. That's all.
Mm. Makes a lot of sense. Interesting. Uh, and so in terms of coming back to the entire model, do you guys see certain life events becoming harder or easier to predict as the world evolves? Like, are there some instances like that as well?
Yes. So let's start with the prevalence model, right? So, and again, I'm just going to pick on myself. I have a higher prevalence for type 2 diabetes. That's the base model coming out day I'm born. Well, if I came from a poor family who didn't have a lot of money, I may end up eating a lot of sugary cereals and foods as a kid. Means increases obesity. So now obesity plus type 2 diabetes increases my chance of stroke. So we know today type 2 diabetes increases your chance of stroke by 50%, right?
Oh,
Now,
really?
yeah, it's that bad.
Mhm.
Now, it depends on though, I would argue that it also depends on your race, it depends on your gender, and it depends
Right.
on some other factors. Now, this is where it becomes harder, but it becomes really interesting. So, if I am likely to have a good high income, I'm likely to be able to get care much quicker. If I have lower income, I'm less likely to get care much quicker. If I am, let's say, first generation in the US, I may not trust the doctors. I may trust my parents, right? If I'm third generation, yeah, I don't trust my parents. I trust the doctors, right? So, and culturally, you could see that amongst many
Oh, for
different types
sure.
of cultures, right?
For sure. For sure.
The other piece for that is, what are you doing? What's your job? Are you a bartender? Are you a fashion model, or are you a policeman who sits in the middle of a street every day directing traffic? 1,000 people working 10 hours a day on your feet. High stressful job. Do you have your finger on the nuclear button? You're constantly waiting for the command to push that button. High stressful job, right? Being a bartender, maybe not so much. Spurts, yeah, I get it, right?
Yeah.
So it is your stress, your anxiety level that are influencers and weights that
Mm.
will affect other types of things that we call comorbidities, my type 2 diabetes that cause obesity, the BMI that I have. But it's not just BMI, because if you look at weightlifters, powerlifters, very healthy people, they're big, they're not skinny people,
Yeah.
right? They're not unhealthy. They're actually really healthy,
Yeah.
but their makeup is different. So you look at what they do, where they live, how they live, who they are. So it's a combination of each. And then, more importantly, once you know that for one person, well, who is their spouse, right? So now, do they have children? Are they not making money? Because one of the biggest leaders of financial stress, which leads to mental stress, which leads to obesity, which leads to alcoholism, which leads to depression, is I don't have
Ripple
money to
effect.
2 kids. And I live in a place, New York City. It's $4,000 a month. I don't have the money. And
Yeah, I can
$4,000 probably now is cheap, but you understand the point.
Mhm. No, for sure. I can relate to the rent pain having living in New York City myself. But
Yeah.
you mentioned such a comprehensive approach, Robert. I appreciate how you consider not just the individual factors like BMI or stress, but also the interplay between them, and even like how a partner's health can impact predictions. You know,
Yeah.
it's a factor I think a lot of models and a lot of people just don't consider, and it really shows the complexity of these models. Shifting gears a little bit from your product, AI is clearly having a huge impact in health and wealth management. But in your experience, what industries do you see being most transformed by AI today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I like it because where I see it impacting the most versus where I think it should impact are two different things.
Yep, yep. I would love you to
So
answer both.
great. I asked myself a question. That's it. So the first one I would say would be where I see it impacting the most today is on the healthcare side. I think second to that would be insurance. And I'm going to bring back some evidence as to why these industries are thinking of it in such a drastic manner today.
Mhm.
Number one would be every country in the world is basically a lollipop, meaning we have a very large constituency of baby boomers, the largest population. In the US, it's 70 million baby boomers, whatever the number, 72 million, I forgot offhand, which is funny. But you have all of those baby boomers that are going to be 65 in the next 6 years. So we have the largest ever transference of wealth, the largest amount of people that hold the most amount of money, that own the most of the houses, that as they get older will need the most amount of health care possible. And if you look at all of the way we're set up in the US, if you look at all the facilities, you got home health care facilities, you've got hospitals, you've got long-term care facilities, you've got nursing homes, whatever they are. Maybe you're talking 40,000, maybe at the high end, 58,000. You can't put 75 million people into 58,000 facilities. It's impossible.
Of course.
So there is a huge, I call a silver tsunami on its way, and we aren't ready because there's expenses that are going to be unknown and hidden, but discovered soon. Today, we're still at the point where there's 10,000 boomers retiring a day. My belief is by 2027, you're going to start to see 10,000 boomers dying a day. Because as that wave of people in age, think of a bell curve, as it starts to go past, the first people will start dying, then more people start dying. And what do you do? Right. So then there's impacts financially, there's impacts expenses, there's impacts on care. How do you plan for this? So I think that the healthcare systems know this and
Mhm.
they're starting to change. That's where I think the biggest change is coming, but these facilities, they don't change on a dime. It takes them a few years. So I think
Yes.
between now and the next few years, they're really gonna, and home healthcare, anything in the healthcare area, I think is number one. I think secondarily on that side, the insurance side is where you're going to see a lot of people also realizing we've got to do something because where are all these premiums? Do we have enough money to cover? What can we do? There's a lot of risk inherent in a lot of the products today that I think people are starting to look at.
No, that's honestly such a great point. And especially I loved your silver tsunami that you described. Really shows just how critical AI is becoming in healthcare and insurance, and it's also clear that demographic shifts are driving a lot of this innovation.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, tying that tying that back to like job displacement, do you think AI will eventually replace financial advisors entirely, or like do you? I know we were chatting about this earlier. Like, do you envision a future where AI complements human expertise, particularly as the demand for this kind of financial advice and healthcare planning grows?
Yeah, I think it always complements. I think that
Okay.
it's always going to be there. So as an example, if you go back when I started in this industry back in 90, 91, um, it's amazing to see everything was done on paper. The New York Stock Exchange, if we traded 200 million shares in one day, phenomenal. Can't believe we've done that. Now single companies trade 200 million shares,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's no the only way you can process that is to use machines. We live in an era where your iPhone is with you 90% of the time,
Yeah.
you know. Watch you wear is smart enabled, your tech, your TVs, your radios, your everything we touch in the homes is smart enabled. So the data that we use is always there and its processing is there. So we don't type physical tickets and hand paper tickets to go buy stock anymore. We don't pick up the phone and call people. It's all done electronically.
Mhm.
AI is taking over where they've all been able to do this today, and there's nothing wrong with it. The difference is, what does it empower? Does it empower the advisor to give you more insights? Or does it empower the advisor to do more with less?
Mhm.
Well, the answer is yes to both. So instead of me maybe having 100 clients, I think today we can probably have 150. Maybe by 2027, you could have 300 clients. But you don't need to answer everything. The computer can answer a lot of things for people. We know when people call in, if the market goes down X%, they tend to call. Some tend to go to the website. Some tend to send emails. You can get ahead of that and start to produce information that says, hey, based on the last 10 years of interactions, you walk through that door at 8:02 and you click this button. Well, guess what we're going to do at 8 o'clock? We're going to send it to you so you don't even have to click, right? So, and I get we're talking process automation. I understand that, but it has to have some intelligence behind it in some form of these types of people do these types of things all the time, and here's how we can get ahead of it to alleviate things. So I think that's the big thing. If it empowers people to do more and do it at a cheaper cost, then that's really beneficial, right? But I think where it will never go away will be the high end, complicated. I own 6 companies. I operate in 3 geographies. I've got ILETs and trusts, and I've got financial planners in 2 countries, and I've got tax burden issues in 6 countries. Okay, that's the bespoke issue, and that's going to completely remain there. But again, the computer is going to be able to start helping and process that sooner, where before it would take teams of people. It'll take less people to do it, but you're still going to want to talk to somebody because I
Mhm.
think that full trust hasn't been given to the machine yet. Even though today we can't live without our phones and our tech, right?
Yep. Such an interesting take, Robert. I love how you view AI as a tool that enhances the efficiency while still keeping a human touch for complex situations. I still don't think we're there yet. Maybe, hopefully, maybe down the line. And also the prediction capabilities you describe, like anticipating client needs, really show the power of AI that a lot of humans generally miss.
Yeah, yeah.
So definitely,
Well,
such
I
a
would
great
argue
point.
with you on a point, Taran. I wouldn't think that humans miss it. I think
Mm.
they can't process enough data,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's it's a human can see this. A human, you and I can walk into a call center and say, how many calls are happening at 8 o'clock? Just a question. Okay, can you tell me who they typically come from? Can you tell me the events that led up to this? Well, we can do this one at a time.
Yeah.
I can't do it over a million calls in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a machine, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. And also just with the human mind, I read this somewhere where that our mind can only process 7 pieces of information at once. So like beyond that, again, pointing back to your point, we can't process as much of data as a
Yeah.
machine. So definitely it makes a lot of sense.
I'm laughing because I can do one thing really well. I can do two things okay. I can do four things not so well, seven things poorly.
Poorly. Yep. Yep. I can relate. But also, Mr. Robert, so outside all of the work applications that we've spoken about today, I'm curious, how do you personally use AI in your everyday life, whether it's with smart home tech, personal assistants, or something else?
Oh, that's a whole nother segment. That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. So we have the smart speakers, we have the tools, we have the smart TVs, the smart home, right? We do that. More and more, I realize how much of my data is out there every day. I try to do everything humanly possible to not let it go out, but still, nonetheless, it's out there, right? The things that I try to really do with that is to help notify me. Think of it as trend analysis. Here's what's happening. Here's what's going on. Here's what you need to be concerned with. That's how I take the approach. But I've got, a microphone. I've got a computer setups. I've got my COD mobile I play, right? So you can always catch me online every once in a while doing that. I use it in the cars and the vehicles and the homes. I use it to relax. I like the way the music comes to me. I don't have to go search for it.
Hmm.
I like the way Thumbs Up gives me a whole new genre, and it's learned more about me. Just like Amazon. Amazon, they know what I purchased. They know when I purchase it. When they bought iRobot, I have an iRobot. Goes out and vacuums the house.
Yeah.
Got a
Yeah.
map. It's got a map of what's in the house.
Right.
It can also assume that, hey, by the fact this is where you live, here's your lat long, here's your house value, here's your home value, here's your age. Oh, and here's the types of products you purchase. They actually know me pretty well. They can pretty much recommend, hey, they might say that Viking stove you have outside, you might want to replace this. How did they know that? Well, because I'm buying it, right? So they're associating and building data models that are hyper tailored, shall I say, not personalized. Personalized to me is a high level, but a hyper tailoring specifically to me. And then when they start to know my life stages and where I'm going, then that becomes extremely helpful, extremely powerful, but can be extremely scary too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so interesting. It's amazing how seamlessly AI is woven into every fabric of our being. AI and just, data and the combination of AI has just, ameliorated it. I personally have Alexa at my home,
Mm-hmm.
and I connected it to ChatGPT and I prompted it to be my therapist. So more often than not, I have conversations with it. And because it's so data driven in the sense that I've the data it is trained on the best therapist practices, so it has given me the best advices I've ever gotten, and I've been to therapy a lot of times, and yeah, that's how I use it.
We should talk about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the other things I've done is, there's always the tools, the chat GPTs, the perplexities, the Claudes. I
Right.
like them for different reasons. Chat GPT is good for what I use it for. I like perplexity when I do more research. I
Yes.
like Claude to be more specific. Jasper, if I really want to tailor a message.
Right.
But then there's all these tools that come out. So one of the things I know I spend too much time on is looking at Instagram and looking at a lot of tech. And all of
Yeah.
a sudden I'll say, oh, wait, what's Munch.ai? Oh, what's repurpose? Oh, what is this? And all of a sudden I'm looking at new tools and systems and I see the application. Phenomenal. I'm actually, I would say, jealous that at your age, you're living in this time where it's unbelievable, but you can take
Yep.
full advantage of it. It's awesome.
I completely agree. Like, I feel so privileged to have experienced AI when I am 22, where I'm not too young and immature to even understand the concepts or apply the use case. I'm exactly at the perfect age to be able to use it and leverage it to my maximum benefit, which I absolutely love, And it's like I actually like I think it's the most exciting time the world is seeing, and I'm excited to be a part of it. A young person in this generation. I love
That's awesome. I'm laughing because when I was 22, we just started getting computers into the
it.
financial services area. Like our first sets of computers were like $7,000, and it was,
Oh,
my gosh, and they were very, very poor.
like bulky computers,
Oh,
like
huge computer.
yeah,
Yeah. We
yeah.
had what was called the Quotron systems, which were a green screen. They were in the not the ASDF, the QWERTY keyboard. They were in alphabetical, and you had to type, and you could only hit certain buttons, and that's all you got. That's
No
it.
way.
Yeah. If I needed
Can't
to
even
buy
imagine.
something for you, I picked the phone. And even though the person was, I could see the person, I had to pick up the phone, tell them, write a physical ticket, go in, punch a ticket into a time punch, hand it to them. They took that ticket, they time punched it, went, picked up the phone, called somebody down to the New York Stock Exchange, who then gave a ticket to an individual who ran down to this one section and then went to the specific spot where they traded that stock, who then said, I want to purchase this. And somebody said yes. And then they handed each other the tickets, they signed it. And then that's the days when I was there.
Yep. Maybe like I don't know, 20 years down the line, a 20-year-old, 2-year-old kid would say the same thing that, hey, no, that this is the most exciting time that
They'll
I'm
just
in.
think about it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You never know. It's going to be amazing.
Yep, definitely. Well, Robert, to wrap things up, one last question for you. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs looking to build AI-driven businesses today? Like, given your experience, what should they focus on to stay ahead, and what are any challenges they think they should be prepared for in implementing AI into their current
Again, four questions. My last question. Here's
operations?
let's start with the simple things. One, find a gap in something. You can use AI to do a lot, but using AI for AI's sake, data for data's sake, doesn't help anyone. So, what is the purpose of what you're trying to do? Who does it help? Sometimes the simplest inventions get you the most amount of money the quickest. And then it depends on what you're trying to do, right? So, I would love to have been the person to invent the paperclip. All he did was take a simple piece of metal, bend it once, twice, three times. Doesn't connect
uh,
it, just bends it three times. Mm, Really?
Massive discovery.
Yes, right?
Massive discovery.
A WD-40, water displacement 40. It was his 40th attempt in making something slippery. And it worked. And he's like, wow, this sheds off the water. Wow, this loosens a whole bunch of things. Amazing. Simple invention. 39 failures, one success. Right? So you have two choices. Do you want to start a company and go out that path? The first thing I would say to you is if you're going to go out and start a company, find some partners, find some people you can work with, find some mentors who can help you along the way. If you have to raise money, I would recommend you have a lot of money in the background in your piggy bank because you're going to go through your ups and downs, right? That's the entrepreneurship route of doing that with the AI. The second piece of the AI, which is where we were, and I'd call this the baseline of the house. So if you think of it that way, is what's the problem? What are you trying to solve? What can you use it for? Because data can be used in multiple ways. When I first started this business for life events, I thought financial services, but then pivoted because insurance companies came at me, but then additionally pivoted and went more finite because hospitals got more interested. So if you're going to try to start the company, try to find the right place where you can get the most amount of attraction quickest. And then there's the other side, that other part, which is I would say touch everything, do everything, try it. And if you don't like it, great, throw it away, go next. So the biggest thing that I would say across all of those, along with the baseline of having that knowledge of trying to learn, is to fail fast. Try it, don't like it, get out. Try it, don't like it. Oh, that's cool. I don't see the use in it. Maybe that use comes down the line. Maybe you learn something using one tool that all of a sudden becomes more prevalent in some other area. It's
Right.
the process of thinking, the process of breaking down those issues and problems. So Sorry for the long answer, but
No,
again,
no,
you're asking
we won.
multiple questions.
I'm sorry, but we want the long answers. That's why the multiple questions. But yes, I do need to reduce on that. But that's some great, that's some great advice, Robert. It reminds me of Mark Cuban's quote, like you just need one idea to succeed, and that will happen when you try 100 ideas, And it's only when you, it's only when you get your hands dirty in different things, you get the experience, you get the exposure. Uh, with
All right,
that
you
said.
said it much better than I did. I'm going to take your answer. Let's put it that way.
I'm just summarizing what you said. It's not my insight at all. But
Oh,
Robert, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so incredible to learn from you, your insights on how AI is transforming financial services with your product, healthcare, and the importance of addressing real world problems with AI are truly inspiring. We covered so many valuable topics: data security, future of financial advisors, and it's amazing. I love the work that your company is doing in leveraging AI for good. So thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Pat and I absolutely appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me here. To your audience, feel free, reach out, touch someone, learn AI, keep it going, fail fast.
Great advice again to all our listeners. I hope you heard that. I hope you found the discussion as valuable as I did. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of Simple Tech Talk. Robert, thank you so much again.
Thanks again. Bye bye.